My name is Margaret Wells, I am 78 years old, and I have lived through things that would crush most hearts. I thought raising 3 children alone after my husband died young was the hardest trial of my life. I was wrong. Nothing prepared me for the day my own blood, the ones I nurtured, left me to die under the burning sun of the Nevada desert, just so they could steal the property I had worked my whole life to build. I remember the smell of dust mixed with gasoline as my youngest, Peter, drove me out under the pretense of a peaceful ride. My heart was full of love, unsuspecting of the cruelty waiting ahead. The sun was merciless, stabbing my skin as the car jolted to a stop in the middle of nowhere. He didn't even look me in the eye when he shoved me out, muttering something about how, "It's better this way, Mom." Then he drove off, leaving me with nothing but a half-empty bottle of water and the scorching heat that felt like it was peeling my soul away. I screamed until my voice cracked, but all I heard back was silence. Hours passed, the sky turned a vicious orange, and my legs gave out. I fell face-first into the hot sand, my throat raw, my heart shattered. I thought, this is how it ends, alone, abandoned, unloved. But as the stars emerged, so did something fierce inside me, whispering, "Get up, Margaret. You're not done yet." By some miracle, I crawled toward faint headlights on the horizon. A truck driver stopped, pulled me up with trembling hands, and rushed me to safety. As I lay in the hospital, barely alive, I swore to myself, "They think they've buried me, but they've only planted me." When I recovered, I disappeared. No calls, no warnings, nothing. They thought I was dead. And that was the perfect cover to do what came next. I had connections they didn't know about. An old friend, a lawyer who owed me a favor, and secrets in my name that would flip their world upside down. While they were busy fighting over my house like vultures, I quietly took control of everything they owned. Their houses, their accounts, even their cars. Every signature was legal, every move calculated. By the time they realized someone was buying up their properties, it was too late. The new landlord was me. And the day I walked into Peter's house, holding the deed in my hand, watching his smug face drain of color, I felt no hatred, just power. The woman they left to die in the desert had returned, stronger, wealthier, and untouchable. But you're probably wondering how I managed to pull this off, how a 78-year-old woman turned her own children's greed into their downfall. Well, my dear listeners, that's where the real story begins. What they didn't know was that I had been planning my moves long before they thought they had one. The past they thought was forgotten held the keys to their destruction. And on the night of my comeback, just as I was about to reveal the full extent of my revenge, someone unexpected showed up at my door. What would you do if your own children betrayed you for money? And where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because you don't want to miss what happens next. I never imagined that the children I once rocked to sleep would one day see me as an obstacle, something to be removed like an old piece of furniture. As I sat alone in my small apartment, days after reclaiming consciousness in that hospital, I thought back to where it all began. Maybe you will think I'm foolish for not seeing the signs earlier, but when love blinds you, it blinds you completely. I raised Peter, Sarah, and Jonathan with my bare hands. After my husband, Thomas, died of a heart attack at only 48, the weight of the entire household fell on me. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I cleaned offices during the night and baked pastries to sell at the farmer's market at dawn. Every penny went to them, their schooling, their clothes, their comfort. I remember the nights I skipped meals so they wouldn't. I thought my sacrifices would make them strong and compassionate. But sometimes, sacrifices only breed entitlement. Sarah, my only daughter, was the first to change. After marrying a man who thought money was everything, she started talking to me as if I were beneath her. She'd come to my house, roll her eyes at my old furniture, and whisper to her husband that I was clinging to the past. Jonathan, the eldest, followed suit. He believed I should sign everything over to them because that's what good parents do. And Peter, oh, Peter, the baby I held closest to my heart, turned out to be the cruelest of them all. The plan they made didn't happen overnight. It started with little things, pressuring me to sell my land, insisting I move into a care home, cutting me out of family gatherings because, "It's too much for you, Mom." They painted me as frail so I would start believing it myself. And I almost did. Until the day they left me to die. That day replayed in my head like a cruel movie. I was sitting in the car with Peter, talking about old memories, laughing softly, thinking maybe he still cared. Then, the sudden stop in the middle of nowhere. His cold voice telling me it was for the best, and the door slamming behind me. I can still feel the heat of the sun biting into my skin. Hear the sound of the tires fading into nothing. That sound still wakes me up at night. But lying there in the desert half dead, I realized something. They underestimated me. They thought because I was old I was weak. They forgot that I was the woman who raised them from nothing, the woman who survived more storms than they could count. My age wasn't my weakness, it was my weapon. After the truck driver saved me, I stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. Not once did any of them call. Not once. They thought they were free. And while they celebrated what they believed was their victory, I was already crafting my plan. I didn't tell the nurses my real name. I didn't call anyone. It vanished. My friend Evelyn was the first person I contacted. We met decades ago when I worked as a secretary, and she became a lawyer. Over the years, she climbed the ladder, becoming one of the most respected property attorneys in Nevada. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I called her and told her what happened, her voice shook with anger. "We're going to make them pay, Margaret. Legally. Quietly. Completely." What my children didn't know was that I had multiple properties under different holding companies. A lesson my husband taught me long ago. The house they wanted so badly wasn't the only thing I owned. Over the years I'd made small investments, buying rundown homes, fixing them up and renting them out. Most were hidden under names they didn't even recognize. With Evelyn's help, I began transferring assets, consolidating power, and buying more, all through shell companies. Then came the sweetest part, buying out their debts. Oh yes, my children were drowning in debts they thought they were hiding. Peter had gambling debts, Sarah and her husband had multiple mortgages, and Jonathan had defaulted on loans for his failing business. One by one, I acquired the bank's liens on their properties. Quietly. Patiently. By the time I returned, cloaked in the identity of a new landlord, I owned every brick they thought was theirs. The day I revealed myself, their faces turned pale like ghosts. Peter stumbled backward, Sarah screamed, and Jonathan just stood there, jaw hanging. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something far stronger. Justice. But as I stood there, basking in the power of my revenge, an unexpected figure walked up my driveway. A man I hadn't seen in over 30 years. His name was Samuel, my late husband's business partner, a man I thought had vanished long ago. And he carried a letter in his hand that would change everything I thought I knew about my own past. Before I could even ask him why he was there, he looked me in the eye and said, "Margaret, you need to know the truth about what really happened to Thomas." My heart froze. What truth? Had my husband's death not been what I believed all these years? And just as Samuel was about to speak, the front door behind me slammed open. It was Peter. His eyes burned with fury, and in his hand was something I never expected to see. What would you do if someone you trusted revealed a secret that could shatter your entire life? And where are you watching from right now? Comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because the storm is only beginning. The object in Peter's hand gleamed under the afternoon sun. A crowbar. His knuckles were white from gripping it so tightly. My heart pounded, but I stood my ground. This was my house now. He could no longer intimidate me like before. "Give me back what's mine, Mom," he spat, his voice shaking with rage. "You stole it all. You." I cut him off with a voice that carried years of pain and power. "I stole nothing. I took back what you tried to kill me for." The words echoed across the yard like a hammer striking steel. Samuel stepped forward, placing himself slightly between us. "Put that down, Peter," he said with a commanding tone I hadn't heard in decades. Peter's eyes darted between us, fury blazing, but something in Samuel's voice made him hesitate. Slowly, he lowered the crowbar, though his face still burned with hatred. "Get out of here," I said calmly. "You no longer live here. This property is legally mine, and you have until sundown to remove your things." Peter's mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but when he saw the deed in my hand, signed and sealed, his words turned to ash. He stormed off, cursing under his breath, but I knew this wasn't over. Samuel turned to me, his face etched with concern. "We need to talk, Margaret. There are things you never knew about Thomas's death. Things your children might have known all along." My breath caught. We sat inside the house, my house, and Samuel handed me an envelope yellowed with age. Inside were documents, letters written by Thomas, and a bank statement that made my hands tremble. The night Thomas died, he had moved a large sum of money into an account under my name, but someone had withdrawn it after his death. Samuel's voice was heavy with guilt as he confessed, "I suspected foul play, but before I could act, your children." A loud crash interrupted him. The window behind us shattered, and a brick rolled onto the floor with a note tied around it. I picked it up with shaking hands. In bold, messy letters it read, "Leave our lives alone or next time we won't miss." Gasp. My children, my own flesh and blood, had gone from betrayal to open threats. The weight of the note made my knees buckle, but Samuel steadied me. "You need protection, Margaret. This isn't just about property anymore. This is about survival." That night I didn't sleep. The wind howled against the broken window as memories of the desert clawed at my mind. I thought about how far my children had fallen, how greed had eaten away the love I once believed was unbreakable. But I wasn't afraid. I had survived the desert. I could survive them. The next morning I made calls. I secured security cameras, changed the locks, and contacted Evelyn. "We need to take this further," I told her. "I want every legal measure in place, and I want to uncover what really happened to Thomas." Evelyn promised to dig into the bank withdrawals and trace them back to whoever had taken the money. Meanwhile, Samuel stayed close, helping me piece together the fragments of the past. He told me about conversations he overheard years ago, Jonathan speaking with shady men, Sarah visiting the bank just days after Thomas's death, Peter asking too many questions about the life insurance. My head spun. Had my children always been plotting, even back then? The truth was unraveling, and the more I learned, the more dangerous it became. One evening, as I sat reviewing documents Evelyn had sent, I noticed a shadow outside the window. I grabbed my phone and dialed Samuel, but before he could answer, the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. My heart raced. I fumbled for the flashlight, but before I could turn it on, I heard a voice, low, chilling, whispering through the cracks of the door. "You should have stayed in the desert, Mother." I froze, every muscle in my body tight with fear. Slowly, I moved toward the kitchen, where I kept a small pistol Thomas had given me years ago. I clutched it, my hands trembling, and aimed at the door. The whisper came again, closer this time. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. "What happened next will make your jaw drop. Would you confront your own children if they tried to destroy you? And where are you watching from right now? Comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because the truth I uncovered next will leave you speechless." The silhouette in the doorway froze when the beam of my flashlight struck his face. My heart skipped. It was Jonathan, my eldest son. His eyes were wild, and his hands were empty, but the malice in his stare was sharper than any knife. "Put the gun down, Mom," he said, stepping closer, voice dripping with mockery. "You're not going to shoot your own son." I tightened my grip on the pistol. "Stay where you are, Jonathan. Don't take another step." My voice trembled, but there was steel behind it. He smirked, tilting his head like a predator toying with prey. "You think you've won because you stole our houses. You think you're untouchable. You're old, fragile. You won't last long. Sign everything back to us, and maybe we'll let you live out your final years in peace." The rage that bubbled inside me was volcanic. "You left me to die," I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "You buried me in the desert and thought I wouldn't crawl back. You underestimated me, Jonathan. You all did. Samuel's voice boomed from behind as he rushed into the room. Back away, Jonathan. He held a baseball bat, ready to strike if Jonathan made a move. My son's smirk faltered, and he stepped back toward the door, muttering curses. This isn't over, Mom, he hissed. You'll regret this. He disappeared into the darkness, the door slamming behind him. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the gun. Samuel gently took it from me. He's desperate. That makes him dangerous. That night I barely slept. Samuel stayed in the living room with the bat, keeping watch. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how love had rotted into this poison. When dawn broke, I made a decision. Enough was enough. The next day I met Evelyn at her office. I slammed the threatening note and the story of Jonathan's break-in on her desk. She nodded, her jaw set. We'll get a restraining order. And we'll freeze any remaining accounts they have left. If they want war, we'll fight legally and financially. While Evelyn worked on the legal front, Samuel continued digging into the mystery of Thomas's death. He found old surveillance tapes from the bank, though most had been erased. One, however, survived, showing Sarah withdrawing large amounts of cash just hours after my husband passed away. My heart sank. How could she? I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. Samuel placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Greed makes monsters out of people, Margaret. The evidence was mounting. It was becoming clear my children had been plotting against me long before the desert incident. Every smile, every hug over the years, it had all been part of a bigger plan to strip me of everything. That evening, Sarah showed up at my door, not with violence, but with crocodile tears. She fell to her knees, crying, Mom, they made me do it. Jonathan and Peter forced me. I never wanted to hurt you. Her performance almost fooled me, but then I remembered the footage. The betrayal burned hotter than fire. Save your lies for someone else, I said coldly. I know everything. Her tears vanished instantly, replaced with a sinister smile. Fine, she said, standing tall. You want war. You've got it. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard it shook the walls. The next morning the war began. My car tires were slashed, my mailbox smashed, and a dead bird was left on my porch. Samuel insisted we call the police, but even with reports filed, the threats continued. They were escalating, pushing me to my breaking point. But I wasn't going to break. I was going to fight back harder. Evelyn filed lawsuits, and we prepared to expose every secret. Yet just when I thought I had the upper hand, a shocking twist came from an unexpected source. I received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photo. Me standing in the desert on the day they abandoned me, taken from a distance. On the back, scrawled in red ink, were the words, "Next time there won't be a camera. Just a grave." My knees buckled as I clutched the photo. Someone had been watching me even back then. Someone else was involved. The phone rang, startling me. When I answered, a deep voice whispered, "You don't know the whole story, Margaret. Meet me at the old gas station on Route 16 at midnight, and you'll learn the truth about your children." My hands shook, my breath shallow. Was this a trap? Or the key to everything? Samuel insisted on coming with me, but my gut told me this was something I had to face alone. As midnight approached, I drove toward Route 16, the desert wind howling around me. The gas station stood in the distance, its flickering light casting eerie shadows. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car, clutching a flashlight. "Hello," I called out into the night. Silence answered me. Then, from behind the station, a figure stepped forward. Hooded, face hidden. The figure whispered, "Your husband's death wasn't an accident, and your children aren't the only ones who betrayed you." Before I could respond, headlights appeared out of nowhere, blinding me. The figure bolted into the darkness as a truck screeched toward me at full speed. Would you run, fight, or stand your ground in the face of death? "And where are you watching from right now?" Comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because what happens next will shock you to your core. The blinding headlights raced closer, the roar of the engine drowning out my pounding heart. For a split second I thought this was the end, again. But survival had become my second nature. I threw myself to the side, rolling across the dirt as the truck screeched past, missing me by inches. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air as the vehicle swerved, turned around, and sped off into the night. I struggled to my feet, my body aching, my hands trembling. The hooded figure was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Whoever that was, they knew something big. My chest heaved as I realized someone was trying to silence them. And me. I scrambled back into my car and sped home, adrenaline surging through my veins. When I got inside, Samuel was pacing, his eyes wide with fear. "Where have you been? You could have been killed." I told him everything, the figure, the warning, the truck. His jaw tightened. "This is no longer just about property or money, Margaret. Someone wants you gone for good." We spent the rest of the night going over every detail. Who else could be involved? Who would want me dead so badly? Samuel suspected someone from Thomas's old business dealings. "Your husband was involved with people he never told you about," he said. "When he died, those secrets didn't die with him." The next morning, Evelyn called with explosive news. She had traced the stolen money from Thomas's account to an offshore bank, and the account was in Jonathan's name. My hands shook as I listened. "That money was meant to protect you," Evelyn said. "And your son took it." The betrayal pierced deeper than any knife. Fueled by rage and determination, I planned my next move. I wasn't just going to reclaim what was mine. I was going to expose every single one of them. With Evelyn's help, we began gathering evidence. Bank statements, property transfers, and every shady deal Jonathan had made. But while we built our case, the threats intensified. One afternoon, I came home to find the word, "witch," spray-painted across my garage door. That night, the power was cut again, and someone threw rocks at my windows. Samuel insisted we hire security, and I reluctantly agreed. Cameras were installed, guards were stationed, but my children were slippery. They always found a way to strike without being caught. Then came the day of the court hearing. Evelyn had filed a lawsuit against Jonathan for fraud and theft, and the evidence was damning. As we sat in the courtroom, Jonathan glared at me like a caged animal. Sarah sat behind him, whispering in his ear, while Peter avoided eye contact altogether. The judge reviewed the documents, and with every passing minute, I saw Jonathan's confidence crack. When the ruling came down, the judge froze all of Jonathan's accounts and ordered him to repay the stolen funds. The courtroom buzzed with shock. I stood tall, my heart swelling with pride. Justice was finally within reach. But as I left the courthouse, a man in a black suit slipped a note into my hand and walked away without a word. The note read, "You're digging too deep. Stop, or you won't live to see the end of this." My blood ran cold. Whoever was behind this was powerful, and they were watching me every step of the way. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. Around midnight my phone rang. The voice on the other end was distorted, mechanical. "You think this is about your children. They're just pawns. The real enemy is closer than you think." Then the line went dead. The next morning, Samuel and I drove to the bank to retrieve more documents. On the way, we noticed a black SUV following us. My heart pounded as I told Samuel to take a sharp turn. The SUV followed. We drove faster, twisting through back roads, until finally we lost them. My hands gripped the seat so tightly my knuckles turned white. Back at the house, we reviewed the documents Evelyn had sent. Buried deep in the papers was a shocking discovery. A transaction linking Thomas's business partner to a mysterious corporation. And that corporation, it was tied to Sarah's husband. My stomach dropped. Could it be that Sarah's husband was the mastermind behind everything? Was he the one manipulating my children, using them as tools to take everything from me? Before I could process it, the security cameras outside beeped. Someone was at the gate. I looked at the screen and froze. 'Twas Sarah. She was alone, crying, begging to be let in. Against my better judgment, I opened the gate. She collapsed at my feet, sobbing. "Mom, please, you have to listen to me. I didn't want any of this. It's my husband. He's dangerous. He's the one who planned everything. He's the one who wants you dead." My heart pounded as she clutched my hand, tears streaming down her face. "You have to run, Mom. He's coming for you tonight." Before I could ask anything, the roar of an engine filled the air. Headlights appeared at the end of the road, speeding toward us. Sarah screamed, "It's him!" Samuel grabbed me, pulling me inside as the car skidded to a stop. The man who stepped out was tall, cold-eyed, and holding something that glinted under the moonlight. "Would you believe your daughter if she came to you with a warning after betraying you? And where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because the danger I face next will leave you speechless." The man's footsteps crunched on the gravel, slow and deliberate, like a predator closing in on its prey. Sarah clung to my arm, trembling. "Mom, please. Don't go near him." Her voice cracked with terror. Samuel stepped in front of us, gripping the baseball bat so hard his knuckles turned white. The man stopped a few feet away, his face illuminated by the security lights. His eyes were cold, dead even, and in his hand was a silver pistol. "Mrs. Wells," he said calmly, like we were meeting for tea. "You've caused too many problems. It ends tonight." I swallowed hard, my heart thundering. "You must be Michael," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Sarah's husband." He smirked. "So she finally told you. Shame it won't matter." He raised the gun, aiming directly at me. The world slowed down. Samuel shouted, "Run, Margaret!" and charged at Michael, swinging the bat. The crack of metal meeting metal echoed through the night as the bat struck the pistol, sending it clattering to the ground. Sarah screamed, and I grabbed her, pulling her inside. Samuel and Michael wrestled on the gravel, grunting and shouting. Samuel managed to land a punch, but Michael was stronger. He shoved Samuel to the ground and lunged for the gun. My mind screamed for me to move, to do something. Without thinking, I grabbed the small pistol Thomas had given me, hidden in a drawer near the door. As Michael pointed his gun again, I stepped out, my hands trembling but my aim steady. "Drop it!" shouted. For a moment he hesitated, then laughed coldly. "You won't shoot me, old woman." Pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, and Michael dropped to the ground, screaming as the bullet grazed his leg. Samuel scrambled to his feet, kicking the gun away from Michael's reach. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The security team had called them when the fight broke out. The officers swarmed in, arresting Michael as he shouted threats. "This isn't over, Margaret. You'll pay for this." His voice faded as they dragged him away. Sarah sobbed uncontrollably, clutching my arm. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have stopped him before it came to this." Even as the police took statements, my mind raced. Michael wasn't acting alone. The threats, the mysterious calls, this went deeper than just him. Later that night, as Sarah slept on the couch, I sat with Samuel. "Why now?" he asked. "Why is all this coming to light?" Samuel sighed. "Because the people behind this don't want you to uncover the truth about Thomas's death. Michael was just a pawn." The next morning, Evelyn came over with documents that would blow everything open. She had found a secret partnership between Michael's corporation and Thomas's old company. The record suggested Thomas had discovered fraudulent activities before he died, and someone profited from silencing him. My breath caught. "Are you saying Thomas was murdered?" Evelyn nodded grimly. "And the trail leads to someone still out there, someone with a lot to lose if the truth comes out." Every piece of my life suddenly made sense. The lies, the betrayals, the threats. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about revenge for Thomas and justice for myself. That afternoon, Sarah confessed everything. "Mom, Michael manipulated us. He convinced us you were hiding millions, that you didn't deserve it, that you'd die soon anyway. He made us sign things. Things we didn't understand. Her voice shook. We were fools. We let our greed blind us. Tears welled in my eyes. You were my children, I said softly. I gave you everything. Sarah wept harder, begging for forgiveness. I didn't answer, not yet. Trust is not something easily rebuilt. While Sarah begged, Jonathan and Peter were nowhere to be found. They had vanished, leaving no trace. Evelyn warned me they might be planning something drastic. They know they've lost everything legally, she said. Desperate people are dangerous. That night, the hooded figure who had warned me before returned, this time on my porch. When I opened the door, he removed his hood, revealing a gaunt, weathered face. My name is David, he said. I used to work for Thomas. I know who killed him. My heart pounded. Who? I demanded. David glanced over his shoulder nervously. Not here. They're watching. Meet me at the old mining shack tomorrow at noon. Bring no one. Samuel tried to stop me from going, but I had to know the truth. The next day, I drove to the shack alone, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. The desert stretched endlessly around me, the same desert where I had nearly died. Inside the shack, David was waiting. He handed me a folder thick with documents. This is everything. Proof that Thomas's business partner arranged his death. The same man who's been controlling Michael. The same man who... He stopped, his eyes widening in terror. Before I could ask what was wrong, a single gunshot shattered the air. David fell to the ground, blood spreading across his shirt. I screamed, dropping to my knees. From outside I heard footsteps approaching. My hands shook as I grabbed the folder and ran to the back of the shack, heart pounding, breath ragged. The footsteps grew closer, and a voice called out, cold and taunting. You can't run forever, Margaret. Would you risk everything to uncover the truth, even if it meant running for your life? And where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because what I discovered next will change everything. The voice outside grew louder, the footsteps crunching on the dry desert ground. My heart slammed against my ribs as I pressed myself against the wooden wall of the shack. The folder David had given me was clutched tight to my chest. I could hear the man's breathing now. Slow, steady, hunting. Margaret, he called, his tone eerily calm. You should have stayed out of this. You're digging your own grave. I crawled toward the back exit, the old wood creaking under my weight. I pushed the door open slowly, praying it wouldn't make a sound. Just as I slipped out, a shot exploded, splintering the wood where my head had been seconds before. I ran, my legs burning, my breath tearing through my throat. The desert sun was merciless, but fear pushed me forward. I zigzagged through rocks and scrub, hearing the man curse behind me. Another shot rang out, missing me by inches. Ahead, I saw a narrow ridge. I scrambled up, my hands scraped raw, until I reached the top and slid down the other side. For a moment there was silence. I crouched behind a boulder, my chest heaving. I clutched the folder, knowing it was my only shield. The truth was my weapon. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps faded. He was gone. Or maybe he was waiting. I stayed hidden until the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky blood red. When I finally dared to move, I ran back to my car, parked far from the shack. I drove with shaking hands, every shadow on the road making me flinch. Back home, Samuel rushed to me, his face pale. Where have you been? I was about to call the police. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing. David is dead, I whispered. They killed him because he knew the truth. That night, we examined the folder together. Inside were contracts, secret transactions, and photos linking Thomas's death to one man. Harold Bennett, Thomas's former business partner. The same man who vanished years ago. The same man who had orchestrated everything from the shadows. Harold is alive, Samuel said grimly, flipping through the documents. And he's been pulling the strings all along. Evelyn came over the next morning. When she saw the evidence, her eyes widened. "This is enough to bring him down," she said. "But you have to be careful. Harold has resources, men who will kill to protect him." Before we could act, news broke that Jonathan and Peter had been arrested in another state for assault and theft. Their mugshots flashed on the screen, their faces twisted with rage. They were pawns who had finally fallen. But Sarah stayed with me, helping me piece everything together. One evening, as we reviewed the documents, Sarah trembled. "Mom, Harold came to me once. He told me if I helped convince you to sign over the house, he'd make me rich." I was stupid. I believed him. But after Michael married me, I realized I was just another pawn. Tears streamed down her face. "I want to make it right. Please let me help you." I looked at her long and hard. Could I forgive her? Trust her? Maybe not completely. But I needed all the help I could get. Together with Evelyn, we prepared a trap. We leaked false information suggesting I would meet with a reporter to expose Harold's crimes. The meeting was set at a downtown hotel. If Harold took the bait, we would have enough to catch him. On the night of the meeting, the hotel lobby was quiet. Samuel sat at the bar, pretending to read the paper. Sarah stayed close to me, her hand gripping mine tightly. The folder lay in my purse, the final piece of the puzzle. At exactly 9 p.m., Harold Bennett walked in. Older, grayer, but still radiating power and menace. His cold eyes scanned the room until they locked on me. He approached with a slow, calculated smile. "Margaret," he said smoothly, "you've been a thorn in my side for far too long." I stood tall, meeting his gaze. "You killed my husband." He smirked. Thomas was weak. He was going to expose me. I couldn't let that happen. "And you were supposed to fade away quietly." The words burned into me like acid. But before I could respond, Harold's hand moved toward his jacket. Samuel shouted, "Now!" And undercover officers swarmed in, weapons drawn. Harold froze, his smirk vanishing as they pinned him to the ground. "You think this ends with me?" he snarled as they cuffed him. "You have no idea who you're up against." As they dragged him away, I felt a wave of relief, but also dread. Harold's words echoed in my mind. "You have no idea who you're up against." Was there someone even bigger behind him? Later that night, as we celebrated the arrest, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single key and a note that read, "You've won a battle but not the war. This key opens the last secret your husband left behind. Use it, and you'll see the full truth." What was this key? And what secret could possibly still be hidden? My heart raced as I held it in my trembling hands, knowing the next step would change everything. Would you dare to open the door to secrets that could destroy you? And where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because what I discovered behind that key will leave you stunned. The key was small, golden, and oddly heavy, as if it carried the weight of every secret my husband took to his grave. I stared at it for hours that night, unable to sleep. What door could it possibly open? Why had someone slipped it under my door right after Harold's arrest? Whoever left it knew more than they should. By morning I made up my mind. I showed Samuel and Sarah the key. Samuel's brows furrowed. "It looks like a safe deposit key," he said. Evelyn confirmed it when she examined it closely. "It's for a high-security bank box. If Thomas left something there, it could be the final piece to all of this." We drove to the bank that afternoon. The manager inspected the key and nodded. "Yes, this matches a box that's been here for decades, under the name Thomas Wells." My chest tightened as we followed him to the vault. The air was cold, heavy with silence. When he opened the box and slid it toward me, my hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of documents, a small tape recorder, and a single photograph. Thomas holding me on the porch of our old house, smiling like the world was perfect. Tears blurred my vision. Underneath the photo was a letter in Thomas's handwriting. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, it means my fears were true. Harold betrayed me. I discovered his crimes, and I know he'll try to silence me. I left evidence here that proves everything. Protect yourself, my love. And if our children ever turn against you, know this. I set aside assets in hidden accounts. They belong to you and only you. Use them to survive. Use them to fight back. My knees buckled and Samuel caught me. I sobbed, clutching the letter to my chest. The documents inside were damning. Contracts, secret ledgers, everything needed to bring Harold's entire network down. And the tape recorder. When Samuel pressed play, Thomas's voice filled the room. He detailed everything. Harold's fraud, the offshore accounts, and the threats he received before his death. If they find this, Thomas's voice said, they'll kill to keep it buried. Margaret, promise me you'll be stronger than they think. When the recording ended, there was silence. Sarah wept quietly. Mom, he knew everything. Evelyn whispered. With this, we can destroy not just Harold, but everyone involved. We left the bank with the box, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. As Samuel drove, I spotted a black SUV trailing us again. My heart pounded. They know we have it, I said. Samuel took sharp turns trying to lose them, but the SUV stayed close. Finally, he pulled into a crowded shopping center, weaving through cars until we lost sight of them. That night, we transferred the contents of the box to a secure location Evelyn arranged. Still danger loomed. Every creak of the house felt like a threat. Even Sarah jumped at shadows. 2 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. The voice was familiar, Harold's. You think you've won, old woman? I may be behind bars, but my men are not. Hand over what's in that box, or you and your daughter will die screaming. I hung up, my hands shaking. Evelyn urged us to stay under protection, but I knew running wasn't the answer. I had something Harold wanted, and I would use it to end this. The next day I held a press conference. Cameras flashed as I stood behind the podium, holding up the documents. These papers, I said, voice steady, prove the corruption and crimes Harold Bennett has hidden for decades. I am turning them over to the authorities. No more secrets. No more fear. The room erupted with questions. The evidence made headlines, shaking the city. Harold's associates began to scatter, many arrested as investigations spread. But the threats didn't stop. Late that night, the power in my house went out again. Sarah screamed as a window shattered. Samuel grabbed the bat, but before he could move, flames erupted outside. Our car was on fire. I called 911 as we grabbed extinguishers, managing to keep the fire from spreading. But I knew this was only the beginning. They were desperate now, cornered animals lashing out. The next morning, an officer delivered shocking news. Jonathan had escaped custody. Peter was still missing, and now both were wanted. My heart sank. My own sons were loose, and with Harold's men on the streets, I was walking a thin line between survival and disaster. That evening, Sarah approached me with swollen eyes. Mom, I've been thinking, maybe we should leave. Go somewhere safe. I shook my head. No, Sarah. This is my home. I've survived worse than this. I will not run. Just as I said those words, a brick crashed through the window, landing on the floor with a note tied to it. Tomorrow we finish this. The message was clear. They were coming. We barricaded the house, reinforced the doors, and prepared for the worst. That night, I sat in the dark, clutching Thomas's letter, my pistol beside me. My heart was heavy, but my resolve was iron. At midnight, the sound of footsteps filled the yard. Dozens of them. I peered through the blinds, men in black masks surrounding the house. My breath caught. This was it. The final attack. Would you stand and fight if an army came for you? Or would you run into the night? Tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because what happened during that siege will leave you breathless. The masked men moved like shadows across my yard, their footsteps crunching against the gravel. They carried weapons, bats, crowbars, and something that gleamed like knives under the moonlight. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. Sarah clung to my arm, whispering, "Mom, we have to call the police." "I already did," I said in a low, steady voice. "But they won't get here in time. We have to hold them off." Samuel stood by the door, gripping the bat like a warrior ready for battle. "Margaret," he said, looking at me with fierce determination, "we're not letting them take this house. Not tonight." The first crash came from the back window. Glass shattered, scattering across the floor like deadly confetti. One man climbed through, only to be met by Samuel's swing. The crack of wood against bone echoed through the house. The intruder collapsed with a groan, crawling back out as his companions screamed curses. Then they came from the front. The door shook under their pounding fists, each slam louder than the last. Sarah screamed, tears streaking her face. "They're going to break it down." I raised the pistol Thomas gave me all those years ago. My hands trembled, but my aim was steady. "If they come in, we fight." The door gave way with a deafening crash. 2 men stormed in, shouting. I fired once, the bullet striking the wall and sending them scrambling back. The smell of gunpowder filled the room, choking and hot. "You want a fight?" shouted. "You picked the wrong house." Another man lunged through the broken window, but Samuel met him with a fierce strike. Chaos erupted, screams, crashes, the sound of fists and wood clashing. I fired again, this time grazing one attacker's shoulder. He howled in pain and staggered out. Then, a voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Enough!" It was Jonathan. He stepped inside, mask off, eyes wild. Behind him was Peter, his face pale but twisted with rage. "Mom," Jonathan sneered, "you should have stayed buried in that desert. Everything you have belongs to us." "You're not my sons," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "You're strangers who wear their faces." Jonathan laughed coldly and raised his crowbar. Before he could strike, the roar of sirens filled the night. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The attackers froze, cursing under their breath. Police cars screeched to a halt outside, officers pouring out with weapons drawn. "Drop your weapons," they shouted. The masked men scattered like rats, some jumping fences, others caught instantly. Jonathan and Peter tried to run, but the officers tackled them to the ground. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. As they were dragged to the cars, Jonathan spat at me. "This isn't over, Mom. You'll regret this." Peter stayed silent, his head hanging low. The police secured the area, collecting weapons and arresting the remaining attackers. One officer approached me, his eyes full of respect. "You're one tough woman, ma'am. You saved yourself tonight." When the last car drove away, taking my sons into the darkness, I collapsed onto the porch, trembling. Sarah knelt beside me, sobbing. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. For helping them, for betraying you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, please don't hate me." I looked at her, tears streaming down my face. "Sarah, hate is what destroyed your brothers. I won't let it destroy me." For the next few days, the house was quiet, eerily so. Investigations continued, arrests were made, and Harold's entire network crumbled. But one thing remained, the key's final purpose. The folder had revealed much, but there was still one last account Thomas had hidden. With Evelyn's help, I accessed it. What I found stunned me. It wasn't just money. It was ownership, shares in properties across the state, assets worth millions. I was now the rightful owner of multiple estates, including the very houses my children once lived in. The irony was poetic. They tried to take my property by leaving me to die, and in the end, I owned theirs. With this newfound power, I made a decision. I would not sell those houses. I would rent them out at affordable rates to struggling families, turning my pain into hope for others. Just when I thought the storm was over, an anonymous letter arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a single sentence. "You may have one, but the one behind Harold still walks free." My blood turned cold. Was there still another player in this cruel game? That night, as I sat by the window, the desert wind howled outside. My heart was heavy, but my spirit was unbroken. I had survived the desert, survived betrayal, and fought back against evil. But the final chapter of this story was yet to be written. Would you keep fighting if you knew the battle wasn't truly over? Tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because the ending of my journey will shock you beyond words. The anonymous letter burned in my hand as if the ink itself carried a warning. The one behind Harold still walks free. I had thought Harold was the mastermind, but this message made it clear. He was just another pawn. My heart sank with the realization that someone far more powerful had been orchestrating everything from the start. I called Evelyn immediately, reading her the note. She was silent for a moment, then said, "Margaret, if this is true, we're dealing with someone who hasn't shown their face yet. Someone who wants to remain untouchable." Samuel, listening in, clenched his fists. "We have to find out who it is before they come for her again." The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. The calm before another storm. Sarah stayed close, helping me organize my new properties, while police kept Jonathan and Peter locked up with no chance of bail. Harold remained behind bars, awaiting trial. But deep down I felt eyes on me wherever I went. Then came the call that shattered the silence. Evelyn's voice trembled. "Margaret, I found something. The documents from Thomas's safe deposit box. They mention a silent partner in Harold's operations. Someone named Victor Hale." Victor Hale. The name hit me like a sledgehammer. Years ago, Victor had been Thomas's friend, a wealthy investor who often visited our home. I remembered his charming smile, his expensive suits, and the way he always looked at our land with a glint of greed. After Thomas's death, Victor disappeared, leaving only whispers of corruption behind. Evelyn continued. "Victor has been hiding abroad, moving money through shell companies. He's the one funding everything, even the attacks against you. If we can expose him, this will finally end." We began working tirelessly to track Victor down. Samuel used his old contacts, Evelyn gathered evidence, and Sarah, determined to redeem herself, offered to lure Victor out. She still had his contact information from years ago. Pretending to want to finish what Harold started, she arranged a meeting with him. The meeting was set in a luxury hotel downtown. I watched from a nearby room, the folder of evidence clutched in my hands. Sarah walked into the lounge, her posture strong despite the fear in her eyes. Minutes later, Victor appeared. Even older. He still carried himself with an arrogance that made my skin crawl. "You've grown bold," Victor said, sitting across from Sarah. "I thought you'd be hiding after your mother's stunt." Sarah leaned forward. "I want in. Harold is gone, Jonathan and Peter are useless. But I can help you finish this." Victor smirked, clearly buying the act. "Smart girl. I'll need access to her properties. Once she's out of the picture, everything she owns will be ours." That was the moment. I stepped out from behind the corner, voice ringing across the room. "Not yours, Victor. Never yours." His face froze, the smirk wiped clean. "Margaret," he sneered, standing. "You should have stayed dead." Before he could move, police officers, called by Evelyn, swarmed the room, guns raised. "Victor Hale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and racketeering." Victor shouted threats as they cuffed him, his mask of charm crumbling. "This isn't over. You hear me? I'll bury you, Margaret." I stepped closer, my voice steady. "You tried once. You failed. And you'll keep failing because I am not the weak old woman you thought I was. I am stronger than all of you." Victor was dragged away, his empire collapsing with him. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. For the first time in years, I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. In the months that followed, justice was served. Harold and Victor were sentenced to life in prison, their assets seized. Jonathan and Peter remained behind bars, facing charges for attempted murder and conspiracy. Sarah stayed by my side, slowly earning back my trust with every act of loyalty and love. With the wealth Thomas had left me, and the properties I reclaimed, I rebuilt my life. I turned the houses my children once owned into shelters for struggling mothers and children, transforming pain into hope. One evening, as the sun set over the desert that had once nearly claimed my life, I stood on my porch and smiled. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of freedom. I had faced betrayal, death, and greed, but I had risen from it all stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. Looking into the horizon, I whispered to Thomas's memory, "We won, my love. They tried to destroy me, but instead, I built something greater than they could ever imagine." And to those who are listening now, remember this. Age is not weakness. Trust carefully, fight fiercely, and never let anyone steal your strength. So I ask you, what would you do if your own family left you to die for money? Where are you watching from? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because my story is proof. No matter how dark it gets, you can rise again and claim victory.